Hello everyone, Karnasar here. There we go, N9. I hope you're happy with that introduction. And welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Gets Real, The Next Millenia. It has been a very long time since I have done one of these episodes, 76 days to be precise. I did check YouTube Studio before doing this voiceover, so I feel like a little bit of a recap is in order. In the last episode, we set up Ellis Space Station around Mars using my fleet of 5 Olympus nuclear tugs, and part of that mission specification was they were to be able to send around 200 tons to Mars and then be able to be sent back to Earth so that we could refuel them with liquid hydrogen, attach a new payload on top, and then send that back out to Mars, or maybe Venus, or maybe even somewhere like Ceres, because after having binge-watched The Expanse, one thing that I really do want to do in this series is set up a space station around that dwarf planet. Obviously, Ceres Station in The Expanse, very cool, and it is something that I hopefully will do before this series has finished. Anyway, we are now burning back towards Earth, and in order to try and make the most out of these Olympus tugs, what I want to do is I want to come in at an inclination above 53 degrees, because that way I will be able to easily launch something from Norfolk, which is my main launch site in this series, and then refuel them, attach new payloads, all of that kind of stuff. So the inclination does have to be quite precise when I get back. And in order to achieve that, we are going to be performing some deep space maneuvers in around 200 days to really fine-tune our Earth approach. But with that being done, what we're going to focus on for the rest of this episode now is sending some new stuff over to Mars. So I have not shown it because it's basically a repeat of what I have done in previous episodes, but I have launched 5 new Olympus tugs with an extended fuel tank so that I can send 5 new missions over to Mars. And this is going to be the first one. And it is going to be a lander that we are going to be able to dock to Ellis Station, send a crew of 6 even down to the surface of Mars for quite some time, and then send them back up to Ellis Station once they're done. It's going to be completely reusable because it's using a Raptor engine and we can refill it up with Methalox as and so we desire, and it's going to be great. Anyway, what we just witnessed was landing an Olympus booster, not quite as close to the Space Center as I would like, but I am rather rusty. As I did mention earlier on, it has been quite some time since I have even visited this save, so getting about 1.5 kilometers away, I was quite happy with that, and hopefully later on, as I get more used to coming back to this series, we will be able to land closer and closer and closer to the Space Center. Anyway, this is the lander, and yes, it is not an R7, it is not a Soyuz, it is not some sort of chunky Russian rocket, although it does look incredibly like one. And I don't actually have a name for this, and that is something that I would like you to maybe come up with. If you are watching this, if you've got a name for this mission, why not leave it down in the comments? I'll see what gets the most likes, maybe we'll put it to a vote and we can name this Mars lander. But what we're doing now is we are docking to Olympus tug Rhea. That is something else that I have done after the last episode, is we have named all of these new tugs, and they have been named after Saturnian moons because that was the comment that got the most likes in the last episode. Anyway, you may have noticed when I was attempting to dock this yet to be named lander to Olympus tug Rhea, I was a little bit close to one of the solar panels on that tug, and we did accidentally crash right into it, breaking it. So at a later point in this episode, what we are going to be doing is sending up a crew to try and fix that problem. There we go. We can see it all damaged there against Earth. So, launch number 2 of this episode, and there are going to be a lot of launches in this episode because there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to send over to Mars in this transfer window. This is going to be the PDEV, the Phobos and Deimos excursion vehicle, and essentially what this will do is send a crew from Ellis Station over to either Phobos or Deimos and then send them safely back. Anyway, we have first stage separation of the Olympus booster. I am using that rocket an awful lot at the moment in this series because it is capable of lifting almost 200 tons to low Earth orbit. The first stage is obviously reusable. Well, it would be if I were to land them safely and correctly. Yes, if you caught the live stream where I did these first 3 launches, well, a lot of it didn't go particularly well, as we could just see there. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, this booster has decided it wants to show the world how it can die. dance, and it will dance crazily and spin around on the floor before coming to a complete stop. But we did, however, lose all of the Raptor engines on that first stage, which is less than ideal. It was only 17, but still, that is a lot of money that we could have got back. Anyway, with that being done, now we are going to come screaming past this Olympus tug at about 30 meters per second. Yes, I did not start my slowdown burn in time, but luckily we didn't leave the render range of this Olympus tug, so I didn't have to do any funky wiggly maneuvers in order to get back in. What we did there was we just sent the maneuver stage crashing back down into the surface of Earth, and now we have separated the PDEV, and we are going to attempt to dock it to yet another one of these Olympus tugs. So this is going to be different from the Mars lander in that we are going to be using a completely different fuel. This is going to be reliant on Hydrolox rather than Methalox, because I felt like this lander could be a little bit larger. We're not going to be entering the atmosphere, so we don't really need as high a thrust as Methalox will provide us, and we don't need kind of the higher density Methalox that we will need when we're going to the surface of Mars. Anyway, that was the Phobos and Deimos excursion vehicle all done, and I didn't talk about the two ginormous white balls that were on that as well that we docked to the tug. Also, those are just going to be extra Hydrolox so that we can send that vehicle out multiple times in this transfer window. It's going to be great. We're going to go and get all of the science from those two satellites of the Red Planet. What we're going to be looking at now is yet another launch of an Olympus booster or an Olympus launch vehicle, and this time we are going to be launching our Methalox reserves to the space station. So the first launch that I did, the actual lander, which still has yet to be named, that does not have enough fuel in it at the moment to perform a landing and return to Ellis Station. In order to actually get it over to Mars on one of these tugs, I had to take away a little bit of the fuel. So in order to provide enough Methalox so that we can send a crew down as soon as we get a crew over there, we are going to be sending more reserves of Methalox. There are going to be 2 of these sets of balls sent over to the station in this transfer window, and also later on we are going to send a lot of Methalox on a new launch vehicle that I have designed for this episode. It's going to be absolutely great. We're going to be able to send a lot over to Mars. But yet again, we witnessed me failing to land an Olympus booster. This has been a very expensive episode, and now that we have done that, well, we are going to be attempting to dock these fuel reserves to the tug. So I said these are fuel reserves. They also are going to be an integral part of the station too. It's part of the design that I have put together. This is one thing that I have done with this station. I have designed it all in the vehicle assembly building before sending each individual part over, so it kind of looks nice rather than just being a mishmash of parts. I wanted to have some sort of structure to the station. But there we go, we have docked to the Olympus tug, but now it's just a case of waiting around in low Earth orbit for a couple of weeks whilst we wait for our Mars transfer window to open up. We are going to be sending all of these missions at the same time. However, that won't happen in this episode. That'll be in the next one. Yeah, if I wanted to do that in this episode, that would have taken a considerable amount of time more. This episode has already taken about 50 hours to produce. It's been quite a long one. And speaking of the next episode, hopefully it won't come out anywhere near as long as it has been since the previous one, due to the fact that, well, I've got all of the designs already. I just need to do the burns to Mars and actually rendezvous at Mars and send people down to the surface, send people to Phobos and Deimos, do all of that good stuff. But talking of sending people to Mars, that is what we are looking at right now. This is going to be our transfer vehicle, and this is the Mars Hammerhead transfer vehicle, and I've done a bit of a risky gambit with this in the fact that this only has enough supplies to get us to Mars. As soon as we get to Mars, we are going to have to rely on Ellis Station to refuel the supplies on this so that our astronauts can survive whilst they are around Mars, and also refill this up on their return journey back to Earth. The reason being is, in order to try and cut as much mass on this as possible, well, I only put that many supplies on. Probably a little bit of a silly idea, but hopefully it should work out fine. Although that being said, in my previous series, Kerbal Gets Real, that is the reason why I lost 3 crew, because I didn't fill up enough supplies and I was banking on that crew to actually rendezvous with a space station. So fingers crossed that nothing goes particularly wrong. I'm sure it will work out a lot better this time. That was only to the moon. This time we're going all the way to Mars, so it is going to be even riskier, but I have all of the confidence that I could possibly ever need. I've already sent the Olympus tugs there and back, and I know the system works, so as long as nothing catastrophic happens, everything should be good. But there we go, we have now set up the Mars Hammerhead transfer vehicle in low Earth orbit, all that we need to do now is send up a crew. But first, we are going to be launching yet another one of those Methalox fuel reserves. I did say that I was going to send up 2 because symmetry is very, very nice, and I like my space station to look as pretty as it possibly can. I'm going to breeze through this launch rather quickly though, due to the fact that we have already seen one of these, and I don't really want to repeat launches because that's just not great content. But we are going to show it anyway, just to show that I have done it. There we go, the payload fairing has deployed, and we can see that it is exactly the same thing as I launched earlier on. We have got to orbit, and now it is just a quick case of rendezvousing and docking with the Olympus tug. So what we're going to look at now is a new thing. It's something different. It's not new though, because this is a launch vehicle that I have not used since probably the first episode of this series. This is the Orpheus Small, and it was the first launch vehicle that I developed in this series. It is tiny. It is only capable of lifting about 6 tons to low Earth orbit, but that's all I need, because what I'm going to be doing with this is sending over a satellite that will be able to scan Phobos or Deimos. I'm sending 2. I'm going to send 1 to each in order to try and gauge the resources that we are going to be able to find on the surface of those, because it might be something that I do want to do. Rather than going down to the surface of the Mars, rather than the Mars, we could go to Phobos or Deimos and potentially harvest, say, regolith or water from those. I don't know what is on the surface of those satellites, so it is going to be something that I do want to research, hence these 2 missions that we are going to be sending over. And of course, they are very tiny. We are going to be using some insanely efficient Hydrolox engines to perform all of our burns, so we did only need about 5 tons to low Earth orbit. There we go, we can see it does look like a rather bizarre thing, but I couldn't really fit that scanner on any other way. It is a very chunky part and rather awkward to place, but oh well, I feel like I did the best with what I had. Now, though, we are going to be turning our focus to a new launch vehicle in this series, and this is by far the biggest launch vehicle I have ever designed for this series. It is going to be the Super Olympus, and it is so large that it absolutely destroys any modular launch tower that may care to rest underneath. Yes, even the Saturn launch tower is not able to withstand 43 sea-level Raptor engines all firing up in unison and absolutely blasting that launch pad. So, I have said that there are 43 sea-level Raptor engines on the first stage. That provides 118,000 kilonewtons of thrust to get this rather chunky rocket up to begin with. The second stage is powered by 4 Cobra H engines, providing a measly 18,000 kilonewtons of thrust. I say measly, that's still an awful lot. We are going to be capable of lifting between 450 and 600 tons to low Earth orbit with this absolute behemoth of a launch vehicle. And as is the case with most of the launch vehicles in this series, the first stage is hopefully going to be reusable. So the first payload that we are going to be sending up on one of these is going to be our Olympus Super Tugs. That's right, sending 200 tons to Mars was not enough for me. No, I had to go bigger. So the Olympus Super Tug is going to have 3 of the NGE advanced nuclear engines on the base, and we should hopefully, once this has been fully constructed, send upwards of 500 tons to Mars. It's going to be insane. I'm probably going to use this to ship all of the fuel over, maybe even a Mars surface base when we get to that kind of stage. It's going to be great. But now what we are going to be doing is we are going to be attempting to land the first stage of an Olympus Super Booster for the first time, and you may notice some of the engines have already broken off. I have a feeling that is when we launch this, the engines are a little bit too tightly clustered and actually break each other. So that is a little thing that I'm going to have to go in and have a look and see if I can repair. But unfortunately for this landing, I attempted to do a return to launch site because I saw that we had 5,000 meters per second of Delta V remaining. However, because this is much larger than the standard Olympus booster, it took a lot longer to actually turn the booster around and start our boost back burn. And because of that, we were much further along in our flight than I would normally be, which meant that coming back, we had a much shallower trajectory. And of course, we had to burn a lot more fuel to actually try and get back to Norfolk. This meant that I missed the coast of England by a little bit, and we end up splashing down into the North Sea. One other thing that you may be able to notice is that we are losing engines at a rate of knots. Yes, they were burning up because once again, it was a much shallower trajectory. We were coming in a lot hotter than I normally would be. So this is all stuff that I am going to have to fix and rectify in future iterations of this launch vehicle because, well, we don't want to be burning lining up our engines as we come down. So I am not going to be making these changes for the next 2 launches because these things take 150 days to build. They are so big, even with 44 build points in my build queue, they still take that long. And because I had a transfer window to adhere to, well, I couldn't really make the edits. There we go, we did come crashing down. That is another thing that I did learn. We need to use more than one Raptor engine to actually slow ourselves down so that we don't go crashing into the surface ridiculously hard. But now that we have failed landing that booster, we are going to circularize our orbit around Earth at about 400 kilometers so that it is easy to rendezvous with the next mission that we are going to be sending up. And this is going to be the second launch of a Super Olympus. This time we are going to be sending up the external fuel tank for the Super Olympus tug. With just the regular fuel tank, we can still get a lot of stuff around, but it's always nicer to get more. There we go, the 43 Raptors have fired up yet again, absolutely destroying that launch pad. And for some reason, the boat tail adapter on the bottom of that booster is also having a little bit of a random wiggly moment. Not entirely sure what's causing that, but that may also be contributing to the fact that some of the engines do blow up on ascent. That is something that I am also going to have a look into. Although I think boat tail adapters and any fairings in Realism Overhaul and basically the procedural fairings mod, as soon as you start getting into diameters of 12.5 meters, which is what this is, then things start getting a little bit buggy. So that probably may not be a fixable problem, but it is something that I will go and have a look anyway. But we have made it into orbit with the second stage. Now what we're going to do is we are going to detach the payload and try and rendezvous and dock with the engine stage of the first ever Olympus Super Tug. And I've decided to call this one Olympus Super Tug Titan, obviously after the Saturnian Moon Titan. And one thing that I have done with these new tugs, including the smaller ones that I have set up, is they all have different decals on them. That way I will be able to determine, apart from, you know, actually naming them, which tug is which, and you can kind of see on the videos which tug is which. But we are going to be launching the final Super Olympus for this episode now, and the payload that we are going to be sending up on this Super Olympus is going to be 4 more of those ginormous silver balls that we are going to attach to Ellis Station. However, the difference with this is that they are going to be completely fueled, and because of that, well, we are basically shipping 450 tons of sweet Methalox all the way over to Mars. Hopefully that means we will be able to get at least 3 landings from the Mars lander in this transfer window, so we can visit 3 separate biomes of Mars, which is going to provide oodles of science. We're going to get so much data from the red planet. It's going to be great. Our astronauts are going to have a fantastic vacation over there. They're going to see all of the different sites. I'm not entirely sure where I want to set down yet. I will have to determine that when we actually get all the way over, and I have to think about, well, what's going to look really cool. But there we go. We have now rendezvoused with the Olympus Super Tug Titan, and it is just a quick little docking procedure to get these giant balls attached to that giant tug. And now what we're going to do is we are going to actually successfully land one of these super boosters. I didn't do a return to launch site this time, and I was able to bring it down nice and safely. So now, for the last little bit of this episode, we are finally going to be getting to crewed flight. That's right, we are going to be launching a mission that I have not sent up for a very long time. This is my CST Starliner capsule on top of an Orpheus 9. Once again, a launch vehicle that I haven't used for quite some time. This episode has had a very wide variety of different launch vehicles, but then each different mission did require quite a different tonnage. So this mission is going to be sending up pesky Kerbal and Ziggy Kerman Sr. God, he really transcends across all of my series. Yes, he is everywhere. But no, we are going to go to the Mars lander, and we are going to get Ziggy Kerman Sr., the engineer, out and see if we can repair that solar panel that I did accidentally fly into earlier on in this episode. Yeah, that was really bad flying by me, but, well, we had enough time to build up one of these and actually get a crew up. So I said that it takes 150 days to build the Super Olympus to build a crewed mission to go up to space. It only takes a week. That's how ridiculously big the super booster is. It just takes so long. Anyway, Ziggy Kerman Sr. is now out of the CST capsule, and he has gone over to the solar panel, had a bit of an investigation, and realized that it cannot be fixed. Hopefully, that isn't going to be a problem because we are going to send that to Mars now as is. We shouldn't run out of electricity, although we might do. I have modified those boosters now. The tugs, they now only have 2 of those ginormous solar panels rather than 4 that the previous iteration had. I also changed the radiators around a little bit because, well, they were breaking all the time. Anyway, enough of that. We are launching yet another crew, and this is going to be a fully crewed CST capsule. That's right, we are sending 7 crew to low Earth orbit, and they are going to rendezvous with the Mars Hammerhead transfer vehicle, and these brave astronauts are going to be our first ever crew to go and visit the red planet in this series. Well, actually, only 6 of those 7 are going to go to visit Mars because Jack Miller, unfortunately, is going to remain in the CST capsule and return home. But we have Errol Teachin, Mark Sputnik, Boris Bogvardzy, Phineas Masters, Hernan Cortez, and Evan David. They are going to be our first 6 astronauts to visit Mars. Here we have the CST capsule now rendezvousing with the Hammerhead transfer vehicle. All of the Kerbonauts inside look incredibly happy to be seeing their home for the next 3 or so years. I don't actually know how long this mission is going to take, although I do know the burn over to Mars. It's going to take a total of 340 days to actually get to Mars, taking the route that we are going. So yes, it's gonna be a long mission. They are not going to see Earth for a very long time. Here we are, just transferring the crew over rather quickly, getting those 6 across before unfortunately we leave Jack Miller in the CST capsule. The reason why I've not sent 7 crew over is the capsule to return safely to Earth is going to be an Orion capsule, and that only fits 6, whereas the CST capsule fits 7. But we have transferred the crew. Now we are burning away to return Jack Miller back to the surface of Earth, and he lands somewhere down in Greece. I'm not entirely sure. Smack bang in the middle of Greece somewhere. But anyway, that was that. But now what we're going to do is we are going to quickly return to the Mars Hammerhead transfer vehicle, and we are going to fire up the nuclear engine on OT Dione, and we are sending our first ever crew to Mars. So, with that burn completed, the crew are on their way in the Hammerhead transfer vehicle. And one thing I just want to ask, and I want to gauge some interest. I have had a few requests asking for Alisea to basically take one of these episodes and do a voiceover for. Would people be interested in rewatching this episode, but from Alisea's perspective instead of mine? Because we can do that, and I was thinking of maybe releasing a video of that in the middle of the week. Let me know what you think. If you like the idea, we'll get that done, and it should be released some point next week. If not, that's cool too. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I've been Karnasa, and I will see you later.